Cornwall Council Canopy Calculator Video User Guide. There will be two guidance videos, of which this is one, Canopy Policy within the planning process, and the Canopy Calculator Technical User Guide video, and three written documents which should be read in conjunction with the videos. Canopy Policy in the planning process, Canopy Calculator Technical User Guide, and an FAQs. Onto the Canopy Calculator itself, and where data is entered. This is the site summary sheet. This is the first sheet used for submissions where you'll be populating the data, and this is the first sheet that is used for initial assessment. There are red tabs where you'll be populating data, which will give you further detailed guidance on how or what is needed within these boxes. Your initial data entry will be the application site area, the retained priority habitat for exclusion from the site area, and other areas for exclusion, for example, utilities. Onto the second sheet, retained canopy. This will be populated from data that you have taken from your BS 5837 tree survey and relevant ecological reports. It should be noted that hedgerow area will be required, and this is a difference from biodiversity net gains, where it is considered a linear feature. Canopy area can be populated either using cardinal points or with data directly extracted from CAD. Root protection areas would be useful, but they are not a requirement. Once you've entered the canopy data, you will need to remove any canopy outside of the site, any canopy overlap, or any planned canopy reductions to facilitate the proposals. Any RPA encroachment will also be required. This is considered an exception and should very rarely happen. Then select from the final design any trees that you wish to retain or remove and mark as such. And the final column will show you the canopy after deductions, and data from this sheet will update the site summary page that we discussed earlier. Although not strictly necessary, it would be helpful if we use a nomenclature as before, T1, T2, etc., H1, H2 for hedges, G1, G2 for groups of trees. New canopy. New canopy can be identified with the prefixes NT for new tree, NH for new hedge, CH upon a Cornish hedge bank, or NG for new tree group. This can be filled in by your landscape architects and will help inform the landscaping scheme. Canopy area point of planting will be populated in this column, and within this column, this is for tree hedges and tree groups, where you would mark in the area of planting that is to be provided. This will then pre-populate your canopy cover after 25 years, which will then need to be drawn onto your canopy provision plan to identify any overlaps or overhang, which will need to be deducted from the final total. Soil types and soil volumes will affect the growth rates of the trees, and so will the type of planting pits. And this will need to be entered in order to identify if there will be any reduction in canopy growth over the 25-year period. Integration into linear pits or SUDs will reduce the required soil volumes. With all this data entered, this will provide for you your canopy and your required soil volumes at the top of the page. So let's have a look at an example development site. Here is an off-site tree. Here are some hedgerows sited upon the Cornish hedge. Here are some on-site trees. Here is a boundary tree, and here is some scrub habitat. So let's look at an example typical canopy plan. Here we would have the retained boundary hedgerows with the overhang subtracted. The same with the retained boundary tree. We have some retained internal hedgerows, some new internal hedgerows. We have a new tree group. We have some new scrub habitat. We have some new garden trees. We have some new street trees. And we have some new open space trees. On to sheet 4, the species list. This is predominantly for reference and is useful for selecting species suitable to location. Cornwall has a unique climate in the UK, and this will help to identify species which are more likely to establish and provide long-term contribution. The data comes from the Trees and Design Action Group Tree Species publication and has been adapted for Cornwall. There is a column for Cornish trees, and this refers to the suitability. Cornwall has a varied landscape with a number of environmental challenges, and suitability and environmental tolerance to locations is important. Cornwall also has a identifiable unique tree landscape, and when designing planting schemes, this will require consideration for suitability to the setting, including matters such as how regularly the species are found, whether or not they are indigenous, or will they provide positively to the contribution of the landscape character of an area. So what's next? Well, there'll be ongoing review and adaptation of the calculator to ensure that it's fit for purpose and stays relevant with the times, and perhaps discussions as to whether or not 15% is enough.